Hey there, guys. It's Metro, and tonight we're taking a look at the second part of the comparison that I'm making here between prop paladins and blood DKs. Hopefully, you've watched the first video. A lot of it was explained in the first video. If you're watching this and you haven't watched the video about prop warrior, especially ignore pain usage, a lot of this is going to be really out of context and probably off the wall for you guys. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. I'll make sure it's in the description. But anyway, we'll get right back into the discussion. You'll see here we have a Mistweaver monk. I showed his gear when we entered the dungeon. Either way, obviously, this is another variable. Mistweaver monk compared to a druid, not something that you want in an ideal testing location. And also item level difference. Just gonna say that off the bat. My DK is about 10, if not higher, item levels than my warrior. But we'll talk about the actual damage taken difference at the end. It's not as high as I expected it to be. But either way, yeah, we're immediately right into it, and you're seeing Blood DK just absolutely dominate in terms of healing. Now, the monk is healing, but of course, he's healing other people too. So the fact that I'm consistently above him really tells me something, guys. It's de facto that Blood DK is able to heal itself more than the healer is able to heal me. And a lot of it is because of absorbs. I have the chart up. We're going to show it at the end. But yeah, a good, looks like about 40% of the healing I do is absorbs. We got Bone Shield, Blood Shield, and Umbilicus Eternus. Don't forget about those things. They were all absorbs. So, the same things that apply in the last video apply in this one. They have very good absorbs, and not as good as Ignore Pain. Ignore Pain does seem to be the best in the video game currently. But I also have Death Strike, which was 31% of my healing, so almost more than the other ones, like, a very high amount comparatively. So, and that every time I use that, my health is going up, and that's the difference. Having both is really strong. So what you're gonna see kind of is like the upper bar, right, to base all other classes self-healing on. If you're in this same situation, of course this is never going to really be replicable. It's never going to be able to be something that you replicate. But if you were in the same exact situation and you found your class doing a lot less healing to itself and a lot less absorbing, then yes, you are being able to measure yourself by what I consider to be the median, and of course the upper tier, which is blood. Median being warrior. So all they have is an absorb, and we have everything. We have absorbs, and of course a few different types of heals, including Death Strike, Blood Plague heals you, Consumption heals you, and then I have Bone Storm here, which is kind of a talent that I don't know, people probably are not going to take in raids, so kind of discount that if you will. I also have some Leech on my gear, and that did a decent amount actually. 1.4 million, ended at 1.4%. So yeah, you can kind of discount that from the number 2 if you feel like it, since I didn't have any Leech on my warrior. But either way, that's kind of where we stand. Like I said, the synergy with healing really stands well. I talked about this in previous videos, but basically one of the golden traits for the Blood DK, you just put up your 3-minute CD rune weapon there, and it does three combinations of Blood Plague, which also heals you, right? Don't forget about that. It does damage though, and the damage it does when you have Vampiric Blood up, gets that gold trait. It's called Umbilicus Eternus. 500% of that damage is automatically converted to a shield. So there you go. There's the things we talked about already in the last video in action. The more targets you have for these abilities, the more healing you do. That's just a fact. And then of course Consumption, the artifact, which is a small CD. I don't use it very much in here because it kind of tips the scales. I try to only use it when it's really applicable, not to overheal, like right there. Like I needed to heal, so I used it, but I don't just spam it. Like if I spammed it every time, it would really add up. And it's really something that it should be doing because it's actually a lot of DPS to use that ability, obviously. So yeah, that's kind of all in my head. Like I said, trying to keep down as many variables as possible, but there's still really just a numerous amount that can be brought up. So either way, you'll see the boss damage or the boss healing, of course. This is a boss where I try to get a little bit extra healing out on the ads. Also contributes to a little bit of damage, obviously. Any Blood Plague that goes out is going to do a little bit of healing, but it's really, I don't know, the Blood Plague healing is certainly inconsequential compared to the other sources of healing you have. It just adds up a lot when there's, 10 mobs and they all have 3 stacks of the Blood Plague up. So this time, the monk did manage to do more damage to me. Or I keep saying damage. It's going to be hard to look at that and not think it's damage. But yeah, more healing, obviously. He's healing me constantly. I'm healing myself constantly, and that's the spread. A lot of that is just because the reduction is really multiplicative as well. Like I said, Bone Shield reduces all the damage you take from every mob, right? So however many stacks you have, it's going to reduce that many times until you refresh it. So it kind of just goes up and down like that. If you have 10 mobs fighting you and they all attack you, then that's the 10 stacks really. But if you only have one mob, then it takes forever. So it's kind of like, it's worsened as well. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of every time you fight more mobs, you're going to do more healing. And I think that's going to be the way it is for Blood. Kind of the opposite for Warrior. They have some lineality. I don't know if that's, anyway, they have some linear scaling with that, with Ignore Pain. The more mobs they take, obviously the more rage they can generate. And then they have that haste talent, which is pretty good. But with Blood, it's exponential because every one of those mobs directly increase your healing 2 or 3 different ways, at least 2, if not 3, so it's kind of the 5-man. Like I said, it's really the upper bar for where you can measure yourself. And I still believe that Paladin is higher than Warrior. I still believe that, Druid is even higher because they have actual healing. Now, like I said, that's what we're here discussing. I don't know, maybe I can't convince you guys. It's fine. I completely understand. You look at the actual HPS chart either way, and you're going to see a lot of actual reduction from Blood too. Paladin is not going to have that. You know what I mean? They're going to only have some healing, so it's going to look low. You're going to see like, you're just going to look at the HPS chart and you're going to be like, oh, look at Paladin's low. But in reality, all they have is self-healing, The Absorb can come, but it's from a talent or it's from the artifact, So like it's a lot more situational. It's not built into the kit like it is for Warrior and, of course, Blood. So those are the things you need to compare when you're taking a look at this footage. I personally stand by it. Like I said, I really do think that healing goes a lot longer. You saw it in the last video there where I was about to die, and if I didn't have Last Hand, something that increased my health overall, I would have died. The pure absorbs were not cutting it. I was still taking way more damage than the absorbs were able to do. Of course, I'm under geared. Like I said, these are all factors to consider. But in that case, I could have easily popped the consumption, had 4 mobs attacking me. That would have been a very nice heal. My health would have been stabilized. Could have popped Vamp Blood. Very good CD for this. Very good synergy with Umbilicus Eternus. It's just exponential. Start to finish, everything about Blood is really founded upon healing. And I love that because I feel like that's exactly what you want in a 5-man. I really do. I don't know exactly how 5-man's played out before CMs. I don't think anybody really cared. In Cataclysm, it was like, oh, they were hard, quote unquote, but there was no like end game challenge to it, so it didn't matter. This is kind of all evolved since then. You remember Guard, how strong that was. And that was the same thing. It was like, how much vengeance can you get, and then how much guard can you put up? And this really goes to show here, guys. We're going to show it at the end as well, but I'm healing myself more than the actual monk is. And this is not just the absorbs. I'm actually healing myself for that much too. So when I could heal myself for more than the healer can, why is the healer there? You know what I mean? You got to think about this. This is a serious question. This is a serious part of this discussion. I just healed myself for more than the healer did. So what is his role now? Okay, his role now is to be a support, right? He's got to help the group in other ways. He heals, obviously, the other players, but instead of healing me, he could be doing a lot of damage, and he's not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is. I'm not really paying that much attention, but I don't think he is. I don't really think he's done any damage. So this kind of goes back to the other time. We talked about this as well. Healers have the vast potential to do an enormous amount of damage now. And I'm already doing it, guys. In a 7.0, obviously it's not, not balanced or anything, but I'm doing like upwards of 40k DPS as a holy paladin on some of these fights. You know what I mean? So that's like, yeah, that's a good percentage of the boss's health. That's not bad at all. And every healer has that potential. So when you're seeing like, however long this fight is, like a minute and a half, that minute and a half could have been shortened by at least 25 seconds if the monk just actually did good damage. And there's no reason he shouldn't be, because look at how much I'm healing myself. He's trying to outcompete me and losing to a tank in the healing department, There's just no point. This is what I was talking about in that, it's off topic a bit, but it really is important. This is testament to that. If your tank can do this, if your tank can heal you, look at this weird little area I got knocked back into, and that was really weird. But anyway, if your tank can do this, then your healer can do a lot more. He could really play to his potential. Whereas, I'm able to play to my potential, and still, like I said, I'm not a professional World of Warcraft player. So there's a lot to be improved upon here, especially with gearing and enchants and stuff like that. Like, this is the beta, so I didn't put that much time into it. But, if I really cared, if I really wanted to push progression in Mythic 5-mans, I would have a best-in-slot set. Every piece would be meticulous, and every piece would be tailored properly. So when you have that potential as the tank, it's just undeniable. It's really undeniable. Like, look at that chart there. You know what I mean? Look at the amount of healing I just did there. It's unreal. It really is unreal. The number is just silly. It's absolutely silly. And I'm trying, but it's not like I'm doing anything crazy. I'm just playing the game. I'm playing the class the way it's supposed to be played. So, so on the opposite side, right? Devil's advocate. Oh, Metro, you're talking about this, but this is all they have. This is their whole kit. They don't have things like Shield Wall. They don't have things like Last Stand and all that. You're right. You're 100% right. This is their whole kit. I completely, I can't refute that. This is facts. But I just feel like it's kind of like, the opposite is true in actual healing. When you have an absorb goes a lot longer because you can use it preemptively and it snipes out the other heals. So in this case, we have the absorb, that's good, but the actual heal does the opposite, right? Like, it's actually better in this case that for a tank to have the healer to heal and the healer to have the absorb, because they can do their job to higher proficiency and I can pick up the slack. Whereas in the other direction, right, with a warrior, it's the opposite. The healer has the heal and the warrior has the absorb. So the warrior is dependent on the healer to heal him when he needs healing. He cannot heal himself. But with the blood, as you see on this pack here, right, this is a hard pack. I'm doing everything I can to stay alive. And I did a lot of healing there. Look how much healing that is, guys. Do you see that freaking number on the screen right now? Like, take a look at that. So that is the difference, okay? When the healer is outpaced at healing by the DK, by the blood DK, then the healer can do his job in a different window. And it actually really, 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 really makes a difference now. Like, back in WoD, it wouldn't have, because it would just mean that, and that's why people just didn't bring healers to CMs, you know what I mean? Because even though Resto Druids could do good damage, another tank could actually do much more damage over the course of the entire dungeon, not just on bosses. So that's the difference, Like, if you can do your job so well as a tank, then the healer has to reconsider what they're doing. And it's going to be great. I love it. I cannot freaking wait for it in Legion. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun to play a DK and play with good healers, because the healer is going to be so empowered by the strengths of the Death Knight. And, I think it's really evident. I think this makes it really clear. But I mean, I don't know what else to say to convince you guys at this point. If you don't believe me, I don't know. Just tell me why. I'd love to talk to you guys about this. There's been a lot of like weird hate recently about some of these things I'm saying here. And I don't know. I feel like I've at least formulated a like sizable opinion, something that is based on something. Sure, it's a low scale opinion, right? We're talking about stuff extrapolated up from the lowest, one of the lowest types of difficulty. But I don't see, like, I don't know, tell me why it's not true. Tell me why that this healing stuff won't actually translate to raids. Tell me why a warrior, if they had self-healing, it wouldn't contribute just as much as the absorb in raids. Obviously, in raids, like I said in the last video, you can predict a lot more. So the absorb is just as good. But a self-heal is situationally better in 5-mans and at least as good in actual raids. So DK have both. Other classes have one or the other or both. And I just don't see it. Like, I still look at warriors as not having a good option there, as weaker because of that. Now, like I said, their kit around it is strong, but not having a self-heal as such, it just seems really odd to me. They're really the only ones without one. Every other class has one, and every other class has had one forever. And it's always been like this with the warrior, and it's like, no matter how much they overcompensate with ignore pain, like, it's amazing, guys. It's the best thing ever in the game. It's the best iteration of warriors ever had. But I feel like it's still overcompensation. If they just gave them some type of self-heal, they wouldn't have had to overcompensate. They could have just left shield barrier in the game with how resolved work in some way. Like, like you could have kept the resolve for warriors, something like that. And then they could have just had some self-heal, like a repeatable ability, something on a low CD, like any of the other healers that have, less than 10 seconds CD on some of these heals. And that's all they need. but they don't seem to want to give them one. So I'm always going to kind of like keep that in the back of my mind, even though they overcompensate with, things like now shield wall is so important. Things like ignore pain, obviously, and of course last stand are still really, really important for any progression situation, no matter 5-man or what. But just think about it, like they still rely on a healer. So that's all I have to say on that. We are going to look at some screenshots. I'm going to show you guys some numbers, some statistics, and we'll wrap up this conversation. So you'll see this time I actually beat the Mistweaver. That's overall, once again, total 50% of the healing done. And obviously, some of the other classes did a little bit too. So there's another variable there for you. You can't really discount that. But we don't have a no one in the group. That was actually the guy's name. I didn't realize it when I recorded the warrior. But anyway, yeah. So we have the monk. He did 38% of the healing, and to me, he did 33.48 million, which, if you remember from last video, is significantly less. Something to keep in mind that I want to bring up right now. The damage difference between the warrior, I took 142.81 million damage on the warrior. Okay, that's overall, like that's the healing combined numbers from everybody who healed me, and then I have taken 135.82 million on the blood DK. So yeah, what's that? An 8 item level, an 8 million damage difference. That really doesn't seem like that big of a stretch. So I don't know what to say about that, like how I feel about that. But regardless, that's the difference 10 item level makes, I assume. But anyway, yeah, so the monk, as you see, 33.48 million healing. And now let's take a look at the actual DK stretch. Now look, and you'll see the number, guys. It's 102.34 million. That is dirty. It's just silly. It's really, really, really silly. So all heals combined, he did 33. I did 102. You know what I mean? So just an astronomical difference. But the actual healing that I did, which is what we've been talking about, is what we'll look at right now. And back on the left, you'll see it there. Death Strike, guys, 32.84 million, which is an absurd number. That number alone is almost higher than the monk's healing to me, just Death Strike. But I actually took the opportunity to add them all up, all right, all the healing I did. So that's including Death Strike, Blood Plague, Consumption, and Bone Storm, right? So excluding absorbs, just healing things that increased my health permanently, 50.06 million. So I healed myself for like a good 20% more than the actual healer healed me, which obviously, I did that, and that caused him to do less healing. So he needs to do more damage, which is things we talked about. So it's just really absurd. So you saw the damage difference between the two tanks. You can calculate that how you want. Either way, as a warrior, I did not use things like shield wall. I did not use things like, any other actual mitigations besides their active one. And as a DK, I pretty much used the whole kit because they're all involved in healing. So there's a big difference there as well. Like I said, there's a lot of variables that are on play here, but I tried to avoid using any trinkets or anything like that. I have leech on that, so you could subtract that. I didn't want to use anti-magic shell. I popped it by accident, so that's a small number there too. But in general, I used, the kit's availability, whereas a warrior, I focused on something that was only really meant to be its active mitigation, not its whole kit. So you can't really compare the actual numbers, but regardless, the difference in healing is astronomical. It really is. And like I said, when you can do more healing than the actual healer, I think it really blurs the lines on what is a tank and what is not. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, this was all experimental, all right? So please, if you have something meaningful to discuss, I would love to discuss it with you. I really would. But I just wanted to do this because a few people brought it up, and I thought it was interesting. So hope you guys agreed. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next video.